Well, you've heard that old saying, who do that voodoo that you do so well? Well, I'm telling you, the voodoo is working through the WHO. That's the Doctor Who organization. I wish it would stuff itself into a phone booth and go to another universe. It's trying to destroy the sovereignty of the United States. You yourself have to get the facts, get the information. We're going to give you a data dump and a download today. We've got some exciting shows you don't want to miss. And it's time again, that time that I look forward to every single day when across the fruited plains of America, the people come together. The People's Movement, this is the People's Army, like the People's Republic of China. We're the People's Republic of the United States taking back the country. We're taking it back from the extremists. We're taking it back from the elites, the coastal elites, and the crazy elites, and the 25% that have been indoctrinated in America's universities and poisoned to such an extent that we actually have to mobilize the great masses of Americans to save themselves. I want you to think of yourself as on an airplane, and progressives with box cutters have been running up and down the aisles, taking over the cabin, taking over our energy policies, our open borders, trying to provoke war with the Ukraine, crash the American dollar, cut off energy in Alaska, and any pipeline that could possibly create independence. In a word, you are under siege, America. But the good news is the average American is awakening. We don't have the institutional organization. We thought maybe the Republican Party represented us. No, they don't. They come under the same fever of self-interest as the swampy left does. We're going to have to clean house left and right. And on my house cleaning plumbing team today, we have Mercedes Sparks to my left. And we are the plumbers. We're going to kind of get that suction thing going and get the sewage. You know, originally, Trump changed the word from swamp to sewer. He said it's actually worse than a swamp. It's a sewage system. And boy, how right he was on that. Jonathan, are you prepared for any moment's notice? Fact-checking, information finding. You ready and waiting?
Whatever you need, Lance. I'm here.
Denver, we are ready to roll. First story is going to be what everyone is in alarm about is Doctor Who. That's right. Doctor Who. It's the World Health Organization and the fake doctors of the pandemic era. You know, it's not without reason that we don't trust these big institutions. After all, they lie about everything. I used to think that America was a great country in terms of its virtue. And I remember hearing a friend of mine, a preacher who was Argentinian, and he talked about American interference with elections in Central America and America's sordid past of disrupting free elections around the world. And then I realized that, you know, the Dominion voting software actually has links to the Chavez election in Venezuela. The CIA has links also into the voting, into the machine itself, into its passage into Venezuela. These stories have not been covered enough. And probably because of lawsuits, the first things that they do is with something that powerful, like a voting software thing. Why do you think a Tucker won't go near 2,000 Mules? They've received a memo at Fox. This is beyond him. They have received a memo that they're already in some form of litigation with Dominion Software, which will go for hundreds of millions of dollars of damages if you dare to question the legitimacy of elections. Well, the only answer to all these problems is truth. Pour in the truth. Pour in the light of truth. Pour in such blazing, flaming, laser-like truth. But it's not enough. I got a Bible in my right hand for those of you that cannot see the broadcast because you're listening on a podcast. I'm holding a Bible in my right hand because this is a spiritual battle. It cannot be won with a ballot alone, although fake ballots, fraudulent ballots, stolen ballots, and ballots delivered by Antifa and Black Lives Matter, violent rioters. There's like some 60 out of 130 or 200 people involved in Atlanta alone, they found actually have criminal records in other cities and in Atlanta for violence. This is an organized, mafia-like, left-wing system we're up against. And the news media works for this entity. It's a spiritual thing, my friend. It's spiritual because Everyone has a justification for why they do the evil they do. And if you cover all of the tendrils and tentacles of this octopus, you come to one great principality, one great power. Satan himself is trying to oversee the destruction of America, the last restraining force against global lawlessness. And every time you see your government cede its sovereignty to the World Health Organization or some other government entity, United Nations or organized, that has communist China working behind it, you know you're getting sold out by buffoons that either are evil by design or evil by incompetence. Either way, they're like puppets. You can cut the strings. America is the last stronghold of potential freedom. And my God, if we don't break the grip of these people, it will become one of the great executors of a global agenda that is going to fast track misery for the average American like you've never known. You see how they handle lockdowns, forced vaccinations. Their agenda with vaccinations is to surveil you, to combine technology with vaccinations so they can monitor who you're with, what you're doing, even down to the point where they can get to the place where they can monitor your blood pressure, your health, and whether you're reacting positively or negatively to a propaganda news announcement. And with artificial intelligence capability, able to ferret and verify all the reams and terabytes of data, they can actually use computers to identify who is not pro one world government. If I sound crazy, it's because I've done my research. I am the soul of discretion when it comes to prophetically getting carried away with narratives. You didn't see me jump around after the election and prophesy Donald Trump's coming back. I've had a falling out with a lot of my prophet friends because I refused to go there. And I'm telling you right now, there is a sinister global agenda that is trying to snuff out the light of liberty. And I will prophesy this: it will not succeed. There is a global backlash forming. The free people of Australia, the free people of Canada, the free people of the United States, the Christians in Europe, they're aware of what's going on. And now we are beginning to see a massive organized retaliation against these elites. You're not seeing it covered in the news, but every time we have a meeting with 10 to 12 or 15,000 people showing up, where it's pure grassroots, the left can't reproduce it. Lady Gaga can't do it without having to have a massive marketing campaign behind it. We do it spontaneously because the people are rising up. So with the WHO, why should they be concerned, Mercedes, about ceding government authority to shut down or to comply with vaccinations? Why is it dangerous, what's developing here with the details of this WHO agreement?
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, especially if you just read it. So I took the time to read like all 13 pages yesterday of the amendments. And on the surface, right, it comes across as like if we lived in a utopian world where human intentions were all good and everybody was just looking out for one another, I mean, like, okay, that's fine. Like if we lived in a Star Trek type of a world, it would work. But I mean, the type of things that they're talking about, it's like, oh, well, we will offer you assistance. And if the home country, basically the home territory state welcomes it, then we'll come in and we'll set up these different things, or we'll provide you funding and we'll do testing. And you're like, well, how would that work? To your point that who exactly is running the WHO right now? How's that going to work? If we have Biden as president, we have somebody else as president. Yeah, come on in. Who? Come on in. I mean, it's a little scary when you think about some of the implications of what this looks like. And, I think normally the fundamental difference between Christians or people of faith and let's say an atheist is like, ultimately, are people good or are people evil? Do we have an inherent bent towards evil or doing the wrong thing? Or do we have an inherent bent towards doing things that are good? So I think the Christian would say, the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things.
I would say the founders would say that.
Yeah.
Anyone that understands human nature and history knows that there's always been an elite, a ruling elite, a Caesar, a Napoleon, an Alexander, a Politburo, a Maoist regime. And in the United States, we had the ruling elite, and the ruling elite was Great Britain, and Great Britain controlled us. And the genius of the founders was they didn't trust the noblest intentions of human beings because human beings are so flawed, so frail. And besides that, from a systems point of view, suppose you have a noble king. Who's to say he won't have an idiot for a son on the throne after him? So the only system that could possibly survive was one with that remarkable word called checks and balances. There is a great, in Philadelphia, the home of our Constitution, where I grew up in Philadelphia, which happens to be one of the most corrupt cities in the United States, not surprisingly, because wherever good goes, if you don't vigilantly protect it, evil tends to take it over, and it becomes worse after the fact. Jesus said when a house is swept clean, if you don't occupy it, it becomes 7 times worse. So you have to be very vigilant when you occupy something powerful and righteous, that you protect it, because the devil will try to come back and make it a weapon. Look at Harvard. It's hilarious to me. Harvard and Yale were started for the dissemination of Christian gospel, enlightened preachers, and veritas, which is the pursuit of truth and the light of Scripture. And literally, you can't be a Christian on those campuses without being persecuted nowadays. So it's gone from being Harvard for the education of clergy to Harvard, the bastion of anti-Christianity. That's what happens when you don't guard the institution. That's why America could be a bigger threat falling into the hands of these crazy people than it ever would have been had it not become a great nation, because its institutions, its military, its economic clout, its United Nations in New York can become nothing but a staging ground for the global government, global economy, global persecution of the righteous. And you could say, well, this stuff's in the Bible, Lance. Yeah, but the timing of it is what I'm interested in. Satan always tries to get a hold prematurely. That's what lust is. It's the inability to contain desire. So the very nature of the devil is lust. He has to have. But you know what? You don't want to give him authority when it's not time. And right now it's the time for a righteous rebellion. It's a time to set the clock back and to take back ground. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how we do it. People still ask me all the time, Lance, are you still friends with Mike Lindell? Of course, Mike and I are on a regular first. We just call each other whenever we need each other's encouragement. But, I find that I don't have to call Mike when I'm slipping into these slippers. I have various different styles of Mike slippers. And this one is, of course, the favorite, the gray suede with the snug back on it, because it's got the indoor-outdoor sole on it, the 4-ply cushiony interior with the whole fur. The fur is so much like rabbit fur, and then it's got the silk stitched out exterior. My favorite one for the late night, but during the day I like to slip on. You get in and out of bed real quick. You don't want to have to mess around. You kind of like, if you're like my age, you go up in the middle of the night. Well, this was the one I used for the middle of the night journeys around the house, wandering around, for instance, because this one slips on and slips off so easy. But you know what I love? The bathrobe. It's probably, if you guys, people are telling me now, like, Lance, I've got everything. Well, some of you don't, because I found out that I ordered medium and I should have got large. So, I've got the large bathrobe now on order because I ordered the medium by accident. But we're going to be doing our late night shows, and I'm going to be asking you guys what your preferred Mike Lindell stuff is. MyPillow.com, use promotion code Lance. You can get the same stuff I've got for 40, 50, 60% off. MyPillow.com, and use the code Lance. This guy's such a patriot. We all love him, and we support him 100%. Mike Lindell, we're praying for you. And we're back diving in to the Doctor Who controversy, because the World Health Organization is another one. It's like the Global Monetary Fund. It's like the UN. I distrust profoundly all of those entities. I was talking earlier, but I got distracted. I can't say I was distracted by anything you said. I distracted myself, actually, talking about various things. But I was talking about Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia where the Constitutional Hall is, and I got off on how Philadelphia's become so corrupt. But let me rewind the tape. In Philadelphia at the Constitutional Hall, they have a powerful, gigantic piece of kind of like mechanical art, which is for students. And it's so instructive. Imagine this massive architectural recreation of the Capitol, where the legislators meet, the executive branch over here, where the president is hanging out, and then the Supreme Court over here, where the courts of the lands are. Now watch what happens. When you push down, boom, on legislation, boom, what comes up? It's the executive branch of the Supreme Court. There's your checks and balances. When you push down with the executive branch, boom, it's the Supreme Court and the legislative go. If the legislator and the executive branch push down, boom, the Supreme Court could possibly come up and say, hold on now. You're violating a fundamental protection of the Constitution. Remember, the Supreme Court isn't there to decide whether what month a baby can be terminated, if a man can marry a man. We've given those powers to the court way beyond the founders' vision, because the founders said, hey, you can't legislate those things. The states are going to have to debate them, and if the states put electors up there that vote in line with what they believe, then you have legislation. But you can't go to the court to bypass the difficult business of debating something, which is what lazy Americans are doing in public. They don't want to lose elections, so they don't want to comment on the economy, on who's going to get cut from entitlements, on what to do with the border. So they kick the can up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is now saying, during the era of Justice Roberts, catch this, no, we're going to send it back to the states. If there is widespread populist upheaval, if 60 or 70% of Americans don't want something, we're not going to legislate that which is not wanted by, it's government by the people, not government by the legislator or litigation. So in Philadelphia, you get this lesson. You push down one, you see checks and balances, people. I'm talking about the founders knew mankind is fallen. Therefore, if he's fallen, you have to think about the sin capacity, the selfishness of humanity. And you got to check that. That's why you lock the door at night. That's why you've got keys in the keychain. That's why you have codes to get into your phone. Don't be naive. You do those things not because you don't trust your spouse or your kids. It's because you don't trust the people you don't know. Somebody's trying to get at your money, get at your home, and get at your life. So, Mercedes.
I was going to say one thing. I think it's really interesting. So I went on that trip, I think with you and Annabelle, we went to Philadelphia to go see our good friend Nancy Hansen, who was putting on a big event up there. And we got to do this tour, and we got to go see the Liberty Bell. And it was an interesting, I think it's a prophetic word. I don't know if you're going to be able to summarize it or even remember it. But you had made this you're like the passive prophet. And so you made this throwaway comment, and you said, you know, it would be it was like a prophetic thing with the Liberty Bell because of the crack in it, that it would be the Supreme Court that would ultimately lead to the destruction of America. Do you remember that? Do you remember saying that at all?
No, but I do have those moments of lucid.
Well,
prophetic.
It was because it was the whole story about the Liberty Bell, where it's like they had hung it and they like melted it, hung it, and then it cracked.
Yeah,
when they installed a Supreme Court justice, then they remelted it, did it again, and it cracked. And they just got to the point where we're like, well, we're just going to leave it cracked.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and they rang it actually over. I think it was over an announcement. It had to do with the court, and it cracked right then, which was the timing of it was over the court. Yeah, the day that the court becomes the tool of progressives to force speech codes, to force guns out of your hands, to force you to bow the knee to a vaccination that is dangerous or that will track you, that's the day when you'll see civil war hit the United States at a different level. Right now, it's being worked in words and institutions, but you can reach a point where only where passive people will passively just comply, and there'll be people that'll realize, no, I'm not going to go there. You're not going to make me violate my conscience. So we're not at that point now, but the left is there all the time. They're ready to riot and burn and loot, intimidate, and destroy all the time. That's why I have no sympathy for Christians to support the Democratic Party. I have no sympathy for Christians that do not vote. And I have no sympathy for the saps that think the Republicans are watching out for their best interest. I am a true populist. I distrust both parties and believe the only way you get elected officials to do what you want is when you run yourself, you run the people that share your beliefs, and you work vigorously to police out of power those that do not govern based on the consent of an educated, informed, and enlightened constituency. America still has the capacity to correct the course. Now, the guy that's in charge of the WHO, to be very specific, this guy, his name is Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. I think they pick people with names like this because no one can say them. But so everyone calls him Tedros because it's the only part an American can get down right. Tedros. So Tedros gets to serve like the premier of China for 5 years. That's dumb. He should be like a 36-month position. But it's 5 years because 5 years is way too long. And he just got reassigned to another 5 years. You know what Donald Trump was doing? Donald Trump was saying, I'm going to just defund it. I'm going to defund this stupid thing. And all the liberals and the Republicans and the swamp creatures and the globalists all freaked out. No! And so they were outraged with Trump because we put like more money in than anybody else. But we don't have any influence over who goes in as the president, evidently, because this guy is the hand-picked guy of President Xi because he covers for China. When China had the leak in the Wuhan lab, he said, no, this guy lied. When China didn't come forth with data and that could have saved many lives by saying, all right, here's the sequence of the structure of the disease itself. They destroyed the information because they did it in a biolab, a weapons lab. This guy goes, well, they're cooperating and they're really exemplary in how they're working. In other words, the guy might as well work for the Communist Party of China, and he wants to control your freedom as an American. What makes it even worse is Javier. You know, I watch those Soros-backed guys that are in government right now. The committee that's working with them are the Soros-backed globalists. And these are the guys in government. Javier, what's his name? I got a picture of him today. These guys, I've been watching them for years. He was in California, made his way to Washington. He's dangerous. He is dangerous like Haman in the Bible. So when I see these guys are the delegates working, I got all my alarms are going off, and I'm saying, all right, keep an eye on this. Anyway, I have in my limited capacity as a host at this desk, I can only tell you that I believe that November is going to be a crushing referendum on all these initiatives. So do not needlessly freak out. They're going to vote this thing in before the midterms. I know that. But if you have a Congress and a Senate followed by a presidency that speaks the will of Americans and they say, we distrust the government shutting us down, masking us, vaxing us, distancing us. We don't like the way you handled the last crises, and we are not going to cooperate and blindly and meekly submit to a global government telling us what to do, with China, of all people, being the ones who sets the tune. I think we're going to see damage done to this WHO agreement.
Well, I want to dive into a couple things that it actually says in there, which I thought were really interesting. So I'll post the link. I'll put it up on your page. I'll put it up on my page too. It's like 13 pages of amendments. And so what's bold and underlined is added. So there's this one section in here that says the state party shall communicate with the WHO and provide information, in the most efficient means possible. And it should include, the new addition is genetic sequencing data. And then it goes on with the old stuff, case definitions, laboratory results. So you're like, well, what does that mean? Genetic sequencing data? Like, what in the world? Then there's this other line right above it where it says the WHO involves, it says, okay, if the notification received by the WHO involves the competency of, this is normal, the International Atomic Energy, then they added in these organizations, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Animal Health. Then there's this new one, the UN Environmental Program, or other relevant entities. So here's what I think, Lance, and tell me what you think about this. I think this is moving beyond just your typical pandemic, and I think that this is going to go over to global warming. What happens when global warming now becomes a national health crisis, and then they're going to provide assistance and things start coming in like that. To me, I think a stage is being set that way, that it's moving beyond normal, like, oh, coronavirus, swine flu, and it's going to morph into a door that opens for environmental warming. So that's my prediction, but let me know what you think.
All right, and I do. I believe that they're waiting for the next opportunity for a pandemic in order to exercise their unilateral powers to shut down freedoms and control God. We saw the aphrodisiac of power hit mayors and hit governors, and we saw what happened to nations. You could see Trudeau, how he dealt with the truckers. You could see in Australia where they literally were creating concentration camps. In Australia, people. Austria itself, another nation that was locked down like Nazis. Xavier Becerra, by the way, just so that we're clear, Becerra is the Department of Health and Human Services. Yep, that's the guy I want you to keep an eye on, because I believe, I'm going to predict this, that he is going to be pushed as the first Latino candidate for president of the United States for the Democratic Party. And I'm predicting right now, start digging, look for the Soros connection, everything this guy touches. He was after Trump when he was in office to get him impeached. Keep an eye on him. When we come back, we're going to cover more.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world. See you tomorrow.
Hello, friends. You know, you might notice me drinking out of my new oh boy mug. This is the oh boy cup that my staff said. You say that a lot. I didn't know I say that, but this is the Lance Wallnau Show stuff we have. It's people always want to know, well, can we get a Lance Wallnau Show hat? Well, you got the hat right there. And Mercedes, they can also get the notebook where I put my notes in. And we put our stack of stuffed notes in here. And this is where you can get your notebook. Join me with my cup of coffee. There, you can even wear the hat, which I have to wear sometimes because I'm noticing my hair does get dried out in the Dallas sun.
Does it?
But your hat looks a little different than mine. What's going on there?
Oh, this is the special Lance Wallnau Show Mercedes Sparks edition with Mercedes Sparks and very small lettering underneath. I'll have you see. It's, you know, your name is clearly the prominent name, but just underneath. With Mercedes Sparks. By request, I would say at this point. People are begging us for this edition of the hat, only followed by demands for hats for Carl's name on it or Jonathan? The other guy, which is Jonathan. So yeah, it's fun. Well,
we're starting a trend. And by the way, you can go there and find out all about the With Mercedes Sparks hat if you'd like to get that. And if you have this apparel on, by the way, when you come to our arena events, which are 10,000 and 12,000 people at a time now with our various shows that we're doing, you can, if you're wearing the hat, you get 10% off. The predictive book, God's Chaos Code, still a bestseller, over 100,000 sold, predicting the Billy Graham moment we're heading into in America right now, which is the turn of the populist movement and the rising of a movement to break the power of communism when government starts to conspire against the MAGA movement. We wrote about all this stuff. We wrote about this before the election that we all know was stolen. So, Lance Wallnau, oh, look at this. Best-selling author with Mercedes Sparks. All along, you've been demonstrating this tendency to get your name. Or have you been demonstrating the tendency? Oh, have I been demonstrating? That there is a secret sauce behind that's true. A lot of the Wallnau success. That's why we put your name up there, because you did help us get the book over the finish line. As you said, before the election is better than after. I said, oh, details. All right, you want to go to lancewallnau.com/stuff, STUFF, or /merch, MERCH, or / swag. I was going to say stash. Swag, SWAG. I know in my head it was stash, but thank God I didn't say that. All right, we'll be. And you want to come right back to do it now? Don't forget it. Do it now. If you wear this, 10% off on our product table. 10% off if you got the merch at any product table for any live event.